Alright, well, what we're about here is making a cradle for chopping up wood with a chainsaw. And this is, of course, version 2.0, as we like to say in this day and age. Originally, I had it made out of these stakes, and this is about 5 or 6 years ago that I did this. But being only timber, they tend to sort of rot in the ground, and they're a bit flexible. And the previous one was a bit too big and got bigger. So I've decided to make one out of steel posts, and being version 2.0, it's a new and improved version. So I found two over time that as we put timber in, they tended to sort of do a bit like this, and we ended up with quite a lot of timber, and it became rather difficult to cut. So you can see what I'm doing here is this. Now the way it was if you can imagine something like this, and I had a series of them, and you can see this post over here, and the idea was to just cut down between. So with this new version, what I'm doing here is making it narrower. So you can see down here I've got a brick, and I've hammered these two posts into the ground, and so essentially that's going to be a brick width, which is about 230 millimeters. So in terms of spacing this way, before I had it at about 400 millimeters, and now what I'm actually going to do is make it 300 millimeters or so. What I'm also going to do to ensure that it stays a lot more rigid is I'm going to make concrete feet around here, which we'll get to, and with a bit of steel in the middle of the concrete, which will kind of hold these posts together more and keep them lined up. And by having it like this and having a series of it, we can put timber in here that's 1.5 meters long, and just basically drop down with the chainsaw. It takes 5 minutes, and then you've got a wonderful stack of reasonable sized twigs, and probably anything up to 50 mil in diameter, and perfect for the stove. And I'll just get on and put the rest of these posts in, and we'll come back after that. Dance a bit first. Okay.
No, it's
When
ready.
I'm ready. Grab my shoulders. Alright, so you can see here that I've knocked all 10 of these posts in. These are 1800 mil posts, and they're knocked in 600 mil. And it's rather soft soil here, and so to make sure that these things don't move, I'm making concrete feet around each pair of posts. You can see here the timber I've used is old paling timber from an old fence. It's probably 60 or 70 years old, and everything about this is about the right size. So that timber is probably about 5 inches, so it's about 120 millimeters. That's how deep this is going to be, because that's the timber I've got. And you can see I'm just using bricks as spaces between each of these where we're going to pour concrete, because they just happen to be about the right size. It doesn't really matter how big this is. It's about 120 mil or so there, and it's 120 mil down. I'm going to just cut up some bits of steel and show you. We've got lots and lots of scrap bits of Rio steel like this lying around, which is perfect. Eventually I'll just find enough holes to put that steel in and bury it in concrete for useful reasons. But there we are for now. So what I'll also do when I've poured the concrete in here is I'll probably place a brick in here as well. So that'll bring the gap underneath about that high off the ground, which will be around about 200 mil or so. And that gives plenty of clearance space for the chainsaw dropping out below the timber and for things falling down without digging into the dirt. If you have a chainsaw, you know when you try to cut dirt with it, it goes blunt very, very quickly. So you can see I'm leaving the cover on because it's probably a little bit clearer to see what's going on. You can see now that the gap in here is about 230 mil, and you can see that the chainsaw now has plenty of clearance in there. And I've actually put these posts in at 350 mil, which is plenty of room and gives us just a nice bit of leeway for a length of timber about that far apart, like that. Of course, the timber that we use is essentially just fallen around here, or dead trees and so on, so it's all going to be natural stuff that's going to rot anyway. And that's about it for right this minute. In the longer version, we'll film the concrete drying for those of you who don't have anything better to do. Well, here we are. It's a couple of days later. The beautiful sunny weather has gone away and it literally is just starting to rain right now. So we'll do this very quickly. You can see here the formwork, concrete was poured about 3 or 4 days ago now, and I've just used these bits of Rio bar, which are really great, much easier than hitting big stakes into the ground. So you get the idea of what we've done is just created these blocks like this, and we'll come back in a couple of days and we'll load this up with timber and give a quick demonstration on how we did that. Now if you are not familiar with pouring concrete, you don't have to do that. I did that because the soil here is quite soft, and while this has been sitting, as I said, I originally started with these stakes, and what they've done, because the soil is soft, is basically pushed out like this over the last few years, and you can see it just got ridiculously wide to be able to actually cut with a small chainsaw, which is why I brought these things in to be like that, as you can see. So these were broken off at the ground. The other trouble with using wooden stakes like this in wet soil is they tend to rot after a while, so it was very easy to actually snap these off. And the best contribution that these can make now is to our pile of firewood. Here we go. One thing I'll just say there is I'm not pushing on the saw, I'm really just letting the whole weight of the saw take itself down. And you can see really it's with a sharp saw it's just dropped through like hot butter. If it's a blunt saw, you get nowhere. Well, there you go. Took no time to produce a pretty good pile of firewood. What else can I say? Our American friends, if you're watching this, please adopt ISO standard 8601. There you go. Thanks a lot.